Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the urgent message came through. The communication screen on his desk flashed red 3 times before displaying the official seal of the Zephyrian High Council. Jake nearly dropped his cup. In his 15 years of commanding the diplomatic vessel Meridian, he had never received a direct transmission from the most powerful alien empire in the galaxy. The holographic image that appeared was unlike anything Jake had seen before. A tall, elegant alien with silver skin and deep purple eyes stared at him from the screen. The alien wore robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light, and strange symbols floated around his head like a crown made of energy. "Captain Morrison, of the human vessel Meridian," the alien spoke in perfect English, though his voice carried an odd musical quality. "I am High Counselor Vex Morin of the Zephyrian Empire. We require your immediate assistance with a matter of utmost importance." Jake set down his coffee and straightened in his chair. The Zephyrians rarely spoke to humans directly. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's, and they usually treated humans like children who had just learned to walk among the stars. "I'm listening, High Counselor," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Princess Lyra Vextara, heir to our empire, must undertake a critical diplomatic mission to the neutral zone. She will negotiate a peace treaty with the Krex Federation to prevent a war that could destroy 3 star systems." The alien paused, his purple eyes seeming to look right through Jake. "However, the princess has made an unusual request. She demands to travel only with humans." Jake blinked several times. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "You heard correctly, Captain. The princess refuses to board any Zephyrian vessel or travel with any of our people. She insists that only humans can escort her on this mission." The High Counselor's expression showed clear disapproval. "This is highly irregular and frankly puzzling. Your species is ... new to galactic politics." The word stung, but Jake had heard worse from other alien races. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 50 years, while the Zephyrians had built their empire over thousands of years. Most aliens saw humans as the newest kids in a very old neighborhood. "Has the princess given a reason for this request?" Jake asked. "She claims that humans possess something her people have forgotten. She refuses to explain further." The High Counselor's tone suggested he found this explanation as confusing as Jake did. "Captain Morrison, this mission cannot fail. War with the Krex would mean the deaths of billions. If the princess believes humans are necessary for success, then we must comply with her wishes." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. "When does she need to leave?" "Within 6 hours. She is already traveling to your current location." The High Counselor leaned forward slightly. "Captain, I must warn you, the princess is different from other members of our royal family. She questions many of our traditions and ways of thinking. Some consider her ideas dangerous." The transmission ended before Jake could ask what that meant. He sat staring at the blank screen for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. An alien princess wanted to travel with humans instead of her own advanced people, and the fate of entire star systems might depend on whatever she was planning. Jake pressed the communication button on his desk. "All senior officers report to the conference room immediately. We have a situation." 20 minutes later, Jake faced his senior staff around the oval table in the Meridian's main conference room. Commander Lisa Parker sat to his right, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and her blue eyes alert with curiosity. As head of the ship's diplomatic team, she would be crucial to whatever was coming. Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone occupied the chair across from her, already tapping notes into his tablet. The ship's chief engineer had dark hair that always looked slightly messy and brown eyes that missed nothing when it came to technical problems. If their ship needed any modifications for alien passengers, Alex would handle it. Dr. Kate Williams sat quietly at the end of the table, her red hair catching the light from the overhead panels. The ship's medical officer had gentle hands and a calm voice that could comfort anyone, human or alien. Her green eyes showed concern as she waited to hear what kind of medical challenges they might face. Ben Harris completed their group, slouching in his chair with the casual attitude that made him so good at his job. The communications specialist had short black hair and sharp gray eyes that seemed to catch every detail. If they needed to talk to aliens, negotiate with hostile forces, or intercept enemy transmissions, Ben was their man. "All right, people," Jake began. "We just got the strangest assignment of our careers. An alien princess from the Zephyrian Empire wants us to escort her on a diplomatic mission to prevent a galactic war. The catch is, she refuses to travel with anyone except humans." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "The Zephyrians? They barely acknowledge we exist most of the time. Why would their princess specifically request human escorts?" "That's what we need to figure out," Jake replied. "According to their High Counselor, she believes humans have something her people have forgotten. She won't explain what that means." Alex looked up from his tablet. "The Zephyrians have telepathic abilities, faster than light communication, and ships that could destroy ours without breaking a sweat. What could we possibly have that they don't?" "Maybe that's exactly the point," Dr. Williams said quietly. "Sometimes having all the answers means you stop asking the right questions." Ben leaned forward in his chair. "I've been monitoring Zephyrian communications for months. There's been increasing tension between their government and some kind of reform movement. Maybe this princess is part of that." "Reform movement?" Lisa asked. "Young Zephyrians who think their society has become too rigid and predictable. They believe it's making their empire weak against enemies who don't follow logical patterns." Ben pulled up a file on his tablet. "The Krex Federation, for example. They're warriors who value chaos and unpredictability in battle. Very different from Zephyrian logic and order." Jake nodded slowly. Things were starting to make sense. "So, if the princess thinks Zephyrian predictability is a weakness, she might believe human unpredictability is a strength. But is that good or bad for us?" Alex wondered. "Being unpredictable might help in negotiations, but it could also mean she expects us to do something dangerous or crazy." "We'll find out soon enough," Jake said. "She be here within the hour. Lisa, I want you to research everything we know about Zephyrian Royal Protocol. Alex, make sure our ship is ready for an alien passenger with different environmental needs. Kate, study their biology in case we need to provide medical assistance. Ben, keep monitoring all communications channels for any signs of trouble." As his team dispersed to prepare, Jake remained in the conference room, staring out the large window at the stars beyond. In his years of commanding the Meridian, he had transported alien ambassadors, rescued stranded travelers, and even helped broker peace agreements between minor worlds. But he had never been personally requested by alien royalty, and certainly never been told that the fate of billions depended on human qualities that supposedly superior aliens had lost. 40 minutes later, Ben's voice crackled over the ship's communication system. "Captain, we have an incoming Zephyrian shuttle. It's requesting permission to dock." Jake made his way to the main docking bay, where his senior staff had already gathered. The massive bay doors opened to allow the sleek alien shuttle inside. The craft was beautiful in a way that human ships could never match, with curves that seemed to flow like water and a surface that reflected light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The shuttle landed with barely a whisper of sound. A door appeared in its smooth side, though Jake hadn't seen any seams or openings before. A figure emerged, and Jake got his first look at Princess Lyra Vexthara. She was tall like all Zephyrians, but moved with a grace that seemed almost like dancing. Her silver skin had a subtle glow, and her purple eyes held an intelligence that made Jake feel like she could read his thoughts. She wore simpler clothes than the High Counselor had. Just a flowing white garment that somehow managed to look both elegant and practical. What surprised Jake most was her expression. Instead of the cold superiority he expected from Zephyrian royalty, Princess Lyra looked curious, almost eager. She studied each human face with obvious interest, as if seeing something she had never encountered before. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the same musical quality as the High Counselor's but warmer somehow. "Thank you for agreeing to help me. I know this request must seem strange." "It's an honor, Your Highness," Jake replied, giving a slight bow. "My crew and I are ready to serve." Princess Lyra smiled, and it transformed her entire face. Please, just call me Lyra, and Captain, I have a confession to make. I didn't choose humans because I needed your help. I chose you because I need to learn something that only humans can teach me. Jake exchanged glances with his crew. This was already more interesting than any mission they had ever undertaken. What do you need to learn? Lisa asked. Princess Lyra looked at each of them in turn, her purple eyes bright with something that might have been hope. I need to learn how to be unpredictable. Princess Lyra stood in the guest quarters Jake had prepared for her, looking around with obvious fascination. The room was simple by human standards, with a bed, desk, small table, and a window showing the stars outside. But the princess touched everything like she had never seen such objects before. Your furniture doesn't respond to thoughts, she said to Dr. Williams, who was checking the room's environmental systems. How do you adjust the temperature or lighting? Kate showed her the manual controls on the wall. We use these switches and dials. You have to physically touch them to make changes. Princess Lyra pressed a switch and watched the lights dim. She pressed it again, and they brightened. A smile spread across her face like she had discovered something wonderful. Fascinating. Everything requires a deliberate action. Is that different from your ships? Kate asked. Very different. Zephyrian technology responds to our mental commands. We think about what we want, and it happens, but this... She pressed the light switch several more times. This requires you to make a choice each time. You must decide to act. Kate noticed something in the princess's voice, a kind of wonder. That seemed unusual for someone from such an advanced civilization. Does that seem good or bad to you? I'm not sure yet, Princess Lyra admitted, but it's certainly more interesting. Meanwhile, in the ship's engineering section, Alex Stone was showing the princess how human technology worked. She had asked to see the engine room, claiming she wanted to understand how humans traveled between stars without telepathic navigation systems. This is our main drive core, Alex explained, pointing to the massive cylindrical device that hummed with energy. It bends space around the ship so we can travel faster than light. Princess Lyra walked around the engine, studying it from every angle. Your design is so different from ours. Zephyrian ships use crystalline matrices that focus mental energy to fold space, but this machine, it works entirely on its own. That's right, Alex said with pride. Once we program the navigation computer and start the engine, it runs independently. We don't need to maintain constant mental contact with it. What happens if something goes wrong? Alex grinned. That's where it gets interesting. We improvise. As if summoned by his words, an alarm started beeping. Alex rushed to a control panel where red lights were flashing. Speaking of problems, he muttered, quickly reading the display. We've got a coolant leak in Section 7. Princess Lyra watched as Alex grabbed a toolkit and headed for a maintenance hatch. Shouldn't you consult with your ship's central computer first? Calculate the optimal repair procedure? No time for that, Alex called back, already crawling into the maintenance tunnel. I need to stop this leak before it gets worse. The princess followed him into the cramped space, amazed by how quickly he worked. Alex identified the problem, removed damaged components, and installed replacements in minutes. But what fascinated her most was that he made several modifications that weren't in any manual. Why did you add that extra coupling? She asked. The original design has a weak point there, Alex explained, tightening the connection. I've seen this kind of failure before. This modification should prevent it from happening again. But you changed the ship's design without approval from your superiors. Alex looked at her with surprise. It's a better design. Why wouldn't I? Improve it? Princess Lyra stared at him for a long moment. In Zephyrian society, modifications to technology required approval from multiple levels of authority and extensive testing. The idea of an individual engineer making improvements on his own initiative was completely foreign to her. Your people allow such freedom? She asked. Encourage it, actually, Alex said, sliding out of the maintenance tunnel. Good ideas can come from anyone. We don't wait for permission to make things better. Later that day, Princess Lyra joined the crew for their evening meal in the ship's dining hall. She had requested to eat with them instead of alone in her quarters. Another request that puzzled Jake. Zephyrian royalty typically maintained strict separation from lower ranks. The conversation around the table was unlike anything in her experience. The humans talked constantly, interrupting each other, laughing at jokes, and even arguing about trivial matters like which planets had the best food or the most interesting weather. I still say the crystal caves on Deneb 4 are more beautiful than anything on Earth, Ben was saying, gesturing with his fork. You're crazy, Lisa replied. Have you ever seen a sunset over the Pacific Ocean? Nothing in the galaxy compares to that. What about the aurora on Kepler Station? Kate suggested, those green and blue lights dancing across the sky? All beautiful in different ways, Jake added diplomatically. Princess Lyra listened to this exchange with growing amazement. Do you always disagree about such things? We're not really disagreeing, Ben explained. We're sharing different opinions. Everyone sees beauty differently. But how do you determine which opinion is correct? The humans looked at each other and laughed. There isn't a correct answer, Lisa said. That's the point. We each have our own perspective. This concept clearly troubled the princess. In Zephyrian society, we share thoughts directly through telepathy. When there are differences of opinion, we connect our minds until we reach consensus. Everyone ends up thinking the same thing. That sounds efficient, Kate said carefully. But also a bit lonely. Lonely? Well, if everyone thinks the same way, how do you learn new things? How do you grow as individuals? Princess Lyra had no answer for that question. She had never considered the possibility that disagreement might be valuable rather than something to be eliminated. The next morning brought a new lesson in human unpredictability. Jake was on the ship's bridge when Princess Lyra arrived for what she called her observation period. She had been watching the crew work for 2 days, taking mental notes on everything they did. Captain, Ben called from his communications. Station, I'm picking up a distress signal from a merchant vessel. They're reporting engine failure about 6 hours from our current position. Jake studied the navigation display. That would put us 12 hours behind schedule if we help them. The Crex negotiations are time-sensitive, Lisa reminded him. If we're late, it could affect the princess's mission. Princess Lyra watched this conversation with intense interest. In Zephyrian society, the logical choice would be clear. The diplomatic mission was more important than one disabled merchant ship. The needs of many outweighed the needs of few. Ben, can you identify the merchant vessel? Jake asked. It's the cargo ship Lucky Strike, crew of 8. They're carrying medical supplies to a colony world. Jake was quiet for a moment thinking, then he made his decision. Set course for the Lucky Strike. We'll help them with repairs and escort them to the nearest station. Princess Lyra was shocked. Captain, this will delay our mission. The logical choice is to continue to the neutral zone. Maybe, Jake said, but those people need help. We can't just leave them stranded in space. Your superiors will not approve of this delay, Jake shrugged. I'll deal with that when it happens. Right now, 8 people need our help. As the Meridian changed course, Princess Lyra realized she was seeing something her people had lost. The humans didn't make decisions based purely on logic or efficiency. They considered factors that couldn't be calculated, like compassion and moral responsibility. When they reached the Lucky Strike, Alex led a repair team to fix the merchant ship's damaged engines. Princess Lyra watched him work alongside the human and alien crew members, sharing jokes and stories while they repaired the complex machinery. Your engineer seems to enjoy his work, she observed to Jake. Alex loves solving problems, Jake replied. The harder the challenge, the happier he is. But this repair provides no benefit to him personally. Why does he work so hard? Jake looked at her with surprise. Because it's the right thing to do. And because helping others makes us feel good about ourselves. Princess Lyra watched Alex laugh at something one of the merchant crew members said while they worked together to replace a damaged power coupling. The joy on his face was genuine, not the polite satisfaction of duty performed that she was used to seeing among her own people. That evening, After the lucky strike was safely on its way, Princess Lyra sat alone in her quarters thinking about what she had observed. The humans made decisions that weren't always logical. They valued individual opinions even when they caused disagreement. They took personal satisfaction in helping others even when it cost them time and resources, but most importantly, they did these things without being ordered to by higher authorities. They chose to act based on their own judgment and values. She began to understand why her empire was struggling against enemies like the Krex Federation. Zephyrians had become too predictable because they always chose the most logical course of action. Their enemies could anticipate their moves because they followed patterns that made sense, but humans didn't always make sense. They were driven by emotions, instincts, and moral principles that couldn't be calculated. This made them unpredictable. And unpredictability might be exactly what her people needed to survive. As she prepared for sleep, Princess Lyra realized that her real education was just beginning. She had chosen to travel with humans not because she needed their protection, but because she needed to learn how to think like them. 3 days into their journey toward the neutral zone, Ben Harris noticed something wrong with the long-range communications. He had been monitoring standard diplomatic channels when strange patterns appeared in the data streams. The signals looked normal at first glance, but something felt off about their timing and frequency. "Captain," Ben called from his station on the bridge, "I'm picking up some unusual transmissions. They're using standard Zephyrian encryption, but the message patterns don't match normal diplomatic traffic." Jake moved to look over Ben's shoulder at the scrolling data. "Can you decode them?" "Working on it," Ben replied, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "But whoever sent these is being very careful. They're hiding the real messages inside routine status reports." Princess Lyra, who had been quietly observing the bridge crew, stepped closer. "May I see these transmissions?" Ben hesitated and looked at Jake, who nodded. The princess studied the data for several minutes, her purple eyes reflecting the glow from the screens. Her expression grew troubled. "These are from the Noble Council on Zephyr Prime," she said quietly. "They're discussing my mission. Is that unusual?" Lisa asked. "Very unusual. The Noble Council was not informed about my diplomatic mission. Only the High Council and my father knew about it." Princess Lyra's voice carried a note of concern that made everyone on the bridge pay attention. "Someone is sharing information that should be secret." Ben managed to decrypt part of one message. "Princess, you're not going to like this. Listen to this part. The princess must not reach the Krex negotiations. Her peace initiative threatens our military contracts and trade agreements. Alternative solutions are being implemented." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "Princess, it sounds like someone in your own government wants to stop you." "The hardline faction," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They believe war with the Krex will make our empire stronger and more profitable. Peace would mean the end of military spending and weapons sales. So they're willing to sacrifice billions of lives for money?" Kate asked, having just arrived on the bridge for her scheduled shift. Princess Lyra nodded sadly. "Some of my people have become very focused on profit and power. They've forgotten that our empire is supposed to protect citizens, not use them." Ben continued working on the encrypted messages. "There's more here. Something about Krex assets. In position and elimination protocols approved. Princess, I think they've made a deal with the Krex to have you killed." The weight in Jake's stomach turned to ice. "How long until we reach the neutral zone?" 6 hours at current speed, Alex. Reported from the engineering station. Jake made a quick decision. "Change course. Take us around the main shipping lanes. If there's an ambush waiting, maybe we can avoid it." "Captain," Princess Lyra said, "if we delay too long, the Krex will assume I'm not coming. They'll launch their attacks on the border colonies." "And if we fly into a trap, you'll be dead and the attacks will happen anyway," Jake replied. "We need time to think." But time was something they didn't have. Alex's voice came over the ship's communication system with urgent news. "Captain, I'm reading 3 large ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They're moving to intercept us." Jake rushed to the main view screen and cursed under his breath. 3 massive warships were approaching the Meridian, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. Even at this distance, Jake could tell they were Krex vessels, built for war rather than exploration. "Ben, try to raise them on communications," Jake ordered. "Maybe we can talk our way out of this." "Already trying, Captain." "They're responding." Ben's face was pale as he listened to his earpiece. "They're demanding that we surrender Princess Lyra immediately. They say they'll allow us to leave unharmed if we comply." Princess Lyra stepped forward. "I'll go with them." "There's no reason for your crew to die because of my people's politics." "Like hell," Jake said firmly. "We gave our word to protect you." "That means something to us." The princess looked confused. "But you're not Zephyrian. You have no obligation to die for our internal conflicts." "We have an obligation to do what's right," Jake replied. "And abandoning someone who trusts us isn't right." Alex's voice came over the communications again. "Captain, the Krex ships are powering up their weapons. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they're in firing range." Jake studied the tactical display, his mind racing through options. The Meridian was fast and maneuverable, but it wasn't a warship. In a straight fight against 3 Krex battlecruisers, they would last maybe 30 seconds. "Alex, how close are we to the Tycho asteroid field?" Jake asked. "About 10 minutes at full speed." "But Captain, those asteroids are dangerous. Ships that size have trouble navigating through them." "Exactly what I was thinking." Jake turned to his crew. "All hands prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're going into the asteroid field." Lisa looked at him with concern. "Jake, if we make a mistake in there, we'll be smashed to pieces." "If we stay out here, we'll be blown to pieces," Jake replied. "I'd rather take my chances with rocks than with those weapons." Princess Lyra watched in amazement as the human crew prepared for what seemed like a suicidal course of action. In Zephyrian society, the logical response would be to surrender her to save the ship and crew. But these humans were choosing to risk everything rather than abandon their principles. "Captain," she said, "I don't understand your decision. The mathematical probability of survival in the asteroid field is very low." Jake looked at her with a grim smile. "Princess, humans don't always make decisions based on mathematics. Sometimes you have to trust your gut and hope for the best." The first Krex energy beams lit up space around the Meridian as Jake ordered maximum speed toward the asteroid field. The ship shook as near misses superheated their shields, but Alex's modifications to the engine systems gave them just enough extra speed to stay ahead of the enemy fire. "Entering the asteroid field now," Alex reported, reducing speed to 1/4. Impulse. Suddenly, the view screen filled with tumbling rocks, some as small as the ship, others as large as mountains. Jake took manual control of the Meridian, weaving between the asteroids with the skill that came from years of experience in dangerous situations. The Krex ships followed them into the field, but their larger size immediately became a problem. Where the Meridian could slip between closely spaced rocks, the battlecruisers had to find wider gaps or blast their way through with weapons fire. "This is incredible," Princess Lyra said, watching Jake pilot the ship through spaces that seemed impossibly narrow. "How do you know which path to take?" "Experience and instinct," Jake replied, not taking his eyes off the view screen. "Sometimes you can't calculate the right choice. You just have to feel it." Ben was monitoring the Krex communications. "They're having trouble keeping up. One of their ships just scraped against a large asteroid and lost some hull plating. But the Krex weren't giving up easily. The largest of their ships, a massive dreadnought, was blasting asteroids out of its path with powerful energy cannons. The debris created new hazards, but it also gave the enemy ship a clearer route to follow the Meridian. "They're gaining on us," Alex warned. "That big ship is going to have a clear shot in about 3 minutes." Jake saw an opportunity ahead. A cluster of asteroids arranged in a complex pattern that would require precise navigation. "Everyone hold on. We're going through the needle." The needle was pilot slang for flying through a formation of asteroids that left only a narrow corridor of safe space. It required perfect timing and absolute precision. One small mistake would send them crashing into solid rock. Princess Lyra gripped her chair as the Meridian dove toward what looked like certain destruction. The asteroid seemed to close in around them like the jaws of some enormous beast. She could hear the ship's hull creaking under the stress as Jake pushed the vessel through maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "Jake's the best pilot in the fleet," Kate said with pride. "He can fly through anything." The Krex dreadnought tried to follow them through the needle, but its massive size worked against it. The ship clipped one of the asteroids and spun out of control, smashing into two more rocks before its captain could regain control. "Direct hit on the Krex flagship," Ben reported with satisfaction. "They're falling behind and venting atmosphere." But their celebration was short-lived. The other two Krex ships had found an alternate route and were now approaching from a different angle. Worse, they had spread out to surround the Meridian, making escape impossible. "We're trapped," Alex said quietly. Jake studied the tactical display, looking for any advantage they might have. The Krex ships were positioning themselves to prevent any escape from the asteroid field. In a few minutes, they would be close enough to destroy the Meridian with concentrated fire. "Captain," Princess Lyra said, "I have an idea. But it will require your crew to do something that makes no logical sense." Jake looked at her with interest. "I'm listening." "The Krex expect us to try to escape. They've positioned their ships to block all the obvious routes out of the asteroid field." "But what if we don't try to escape? What if we attack instead?" Lisa stared at her. "Attack 3 warships with a diplomatic vessel? That's suicide." Princess Lyra moved to the tactical display and pointed at the 2 remaining Krex ships. "They're expecting us to run. Their weapons are pointed toward the exit routes from the asteroid field. But their rear shields are weaker because they assume no threat will come from behind them." Jake studied the formation. "You want us to circle around and attack from their blind spot?" "More than that," the princess said, her purple eyes bright with an idea that would have horrified her people. "I want us to ram one of their ships." The bridge fell silent. Even by human standards, ramming an enemy warship was considered a desperate last resort. Ben was the first to speak. "Princess, that would destroy our ship too. We'd all die." "Not if we do it correctly," she replied. "Captain Morrison, your ship carries escape pods, yes? And you have that shuttlecraft in your cargo bay?" "Yes, but what good would that do against 2 warships?" Lisa asked. Princess Lyra smiled in a way that reminded Jake of a predator about to pounce. "The Krex value strength and courage above everything else. Their culture respects warriors who fight against impossible odds. If I challenge their commander to single combat, they will accept." Kate looked confused. "Single combat? But you're not a warrior." "No, but I am royal blood. According to Krex tradition, if I defeat their commander in personal combat, they must withdraw their forces and allow us safe passage." The princess paused. "Of course, if I lose, they kill me and probably destroy your ship anyway." Alex wiped sweat from his forehead. "So our choices are certain death by ramming or almost certain death by single combat?" "Those are terrible odds either way," Ben said. Jake found himself grinning despite their desperate situation. "Maybe, but the princess is right about one thing. They'll never expect us to volunteer for a fair fight when we could just try to run." "There's nothing fair about this fight," Lisa protested. "The Krex are professional warriors. They've been fighting wars for centuries." Princess Lyra nodded. "That's exactly why this might work. They're used to fighting other warriors who follow the same rules they do. But humans taught me that sometimes you have to break the rules to win." Jake made his decision. "Ben, open a channel to the Krex ships. Princess, you're about to make the most important speech of your life." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the lead Krex warship. The alien who appeared was everything Jake expected from a Krex commander. Commander Zach Thorne was massive, with gray skin covered in ritual scars and dark eyes that showed no mercy. His uniform was decorated with trophies from defeated enemies. "Princess." "They're of Exthara," Commander Thorin said, his voice like grinding metal. "You will surrender yourself immediately. Your people have paid us well for your elimination?" "Commander Thorin," the princess replied, standing tall and speaking with authority. Jake had never heard from her before. "I challenge you to single combat according to the ancient laws of your people. If I win, you and your ships withdraw. If you win, you may claim both my life and this ship." The Krex commander's scarred face showed surprise, then something that might have been respect. "You are brave, little princess, but you are not a warrior. I will kill you in seconds." "Perhaps," Princess Lyra said calmly, "but will you accept the challenge? Or are the mighty Krex afraid to face one unarmed royal in fair combat?" Commander Thorin's eyes flashed with anger at the insult. "I accept your challenge. We will meet on the neutral platform between our ships. Combat will be to the death, with no weapons except what nature gave us." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Jake looked at the princes with new respect. "That was well played. You made it impossible for him to refuse without looking like a coward." "Now comes the hard part," Princess Lyra said. "I actually have to fight him." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "Princes, I've studied Krex physiology. They're stronger and faster than both humans and Zephyans. Their bones are denser, their muscles more powerful. In a straight fight, you don't stand a chance." "Then we won't fight straight?" the princess replied. "Captain Morrison, during our journey I've watched your crew solve problems by thinking differently than your enemies expect. I need you to teach me how to fight like a human." Jake looked at his crew. "We've got 1 hour before the combat begins. Ideas?" Alex was already thinking like an engineer. "Krex fight with brute force and direct attacks. They train for centuries in formal combat techniques. But humans fight dirty when we have to." "Meaning what?" the princess asked. "Meaning we use the environment, misdirection, and anything else that gives us an advantage," Kate explained. "We don't fight fair if fair means losing." Ben pulled up files on his computer. "I've been studying Krex combat footage. They expect their opponents to meet them head-on, strength against strength. They're not prepared for someone who uses tricks and deception," Lisa nodded. "In human military history, smaller forces often defeated larger ones by using unconventional tactics. Speed instead of strength, intelligence instead of power." Jake turned to the princess. "Can you do that? Can you fight without honor, use tricks and deception to win?" Princess Lyra was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything she had learned from the humans. "My people would be horrified by such tactics. Zephyrians value honor and traditional methods above victory." "But what do you value?" Jake asked. "Saving my empire," she said firmly. "And saving the billions of people who will die if this war begins. If fighting without honor will accomplish that, then I will learn to fight like a human." For the next hour, the crew of the Meridian gave Princess Lyra the strangest combat training in galactic history. Kate taught her about Krex anatomy and where their weak points were located. Alex showed her how to use the environment as a weapon, pointing out that the neutral platform would have handholds, supports, and other features she could turn to her advantage. Ben demonstrated techniques for psychological warfare, ways to confuse and anger an opponent into making mistakes. "Krex pride themselves on being logical fighters," he explained. "If you can make him angry, he'll stop thinking clearly." Jake taught her the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to make your enemy think they've already won. Let him get overconfident, let him make a mistake, then strike when he's not expecting it. "You mean pretend to be defeated?" the princess asked. "It's called playing possum," Jake said. "Animals do it in nature. They pretend to be dead or helpless until their predator gets careless. Then they attack." Princess Lyra practiced the techniques as much as possible in the limited time available. She was a quick learner, but Jake worried it wouldn't be enough. Commander Thorin had decades of combat experience. The princess had 1 hour of crash course training in human fighting methods. When the time came, they took a shuttle to the neutral platform that the Krex had constructed between the ships. It was a simple metal structure with artificial gravity. an atmosphere about the size of a basketball court. Commander Thorin was already waiting, looking even more intimidating in person. "You may watch from your shuttle," he told Jake and the others, "but do not interfere. This is between the princess and me." Jake wanted to wish her luck, but he didn't want to give away their strategy. Instead, he simply nodded. "Remember what we taught you." Princess Lyra walked onto the platform, looking small and fragile compared to the massive Krex commander. She had removed her royal robes and wore simple clothes that wouldn't restrict her movement. Her silver skin seemed pale under the harsh lights. Commander Thorin smiled, showing teeth that were filed to sharp points. "Are you ready to die, little princess?" "I am ready to do whatever it takes to protect my people," she replied. The commander laughed. "Brave words. Let us see if your actions match them." He charged forward with surprising speed for such a large creature, intending to end the fight quickly with brute force. But Princess Lyra had learned more from the humans than just fighting. Techniques. She had learned to think differently. Instead of meeting his charge head-on, she dove to the side at the last second. Commander Thorin's momentum carried him past her, and he had to turn around to face her again. The princess used those few seconds to grab one of the platform's support struts, giving herself something to maneuver around. "Stand and fight." The commander roared, angry that she wasn't behaving like a proper warrior. "Why?" Princess Lyra asked, circling around the support strut. "You're bigger and stronger." "Fighting your way would be stupid." This simple logic seemed to confuse Commander Thorin. In his culture, warriors met challenges directly, proving their courage through strength. The idea of deliberately avoiding a fair fight was foreign to him. He charged again, and again the princess avoided his attack. This time she managed to strike him in the back as he passed, though her blow barely seemed to affect his thick hide. But she wasn't trying to hurt him yet. She was learning his patterns, seeing how he moved and reacted. Jake watched from the shuttle, impressed by how well she was applying their lessons. "She's doing exactly what we taught her. Let him tire himself out while she learns his weaknesses." But Commander Thorin was experienced enough to realize what was happening. "Enough games!" He shouted and changed his tactics. Instead of charging blindly, he began to corner her systematically, using his reach advantage to cut off her escape routes. The journey to the neutral zone continued without further interruption from Krex forces. Princess Lyra spent most of her time in quiet thought, processing everything that had happened during her combat with Commander Thorin. She had discovered something about herself that surprised her more than it had surprised her enemies. "I enjoyed it," she told Dr. Williams during one of their conversations in the ship's medical bay. "The fight, I mean. Not the violence, but the challenge of thinking my way out of an impossible situation." Kate looked up from the medical supplies she was organizing. "That's very human of you. We tend to find satisfaction in overcoming obstacles, especially when we have to be creative about it." "Is that what makes humans so adaptable?" the princess asked. "You actually enjoy solving problems?" "Most of us do," Kate confirmed. "It's probably why we've survived as a species. When faced with challenges, we don't just endure them. We find ways to turn them into opportunities." Princess Lyra nodded slowly. "My people have forgotten how to do that. We've become so efficient at following established procedures that we've lost the ability to create new ones." 2 days later, they arrived at the diplomatic station in the neutral zone. The facility was a massive structure built jointly by several alien races to serve as neutral ground for negotiations. Ships from dozens of different worlds were docked at its various ports, representing the diversity of galactic civilization. But as the Meridian approached the station, Ben picked up troubling communications. "Princess, I'm monitoring Krex military channels. They're reporting that their peace negotiator was killed in an accident yesterday." Princess Lyra felt her heart sink. "Without their negotiator, there can be no peace talks. The war will begin within days." Jake studied the tactical displays showing the military buildup on both sides of the border. "Maybe not." "Princess, you defeated their commander in single combat. According to their traditions, that gives you significant status in their culture. What are you suggesting, Captain?" What if you negotiate directly with the Krex military leaders instead of waiting for them to send a new diplomatic representative? You've proven yourself as a warrior. They'll respect that. Lisa looked concerned. That's extremely irregular. The other galactic powers expect formal diplomatic procedures. If the princess negotiates directly with military commanders, it could be seen as bypassing established protocols. Sometimes you have to break the rules to get results, Princess Lyra said, using one of Jake's favorite phrases. Captain Morrison, can you arrange a meeting? Within hours, Jake had used his diplomatic contacts to set up an unprecedented gathering. Instead of formal peace talks in the station's main conference room, they would meet in a smaller space with only military representatives from each side. The Krex delegation was led by General Vex Kohler, a veteran warrior whose scars told the story of countless battles. He was accompanied by 2 other commanders, all of whom looked skeptical about negotiating with someone they considered a pampered royal, but when Princess Lyra entered the meeting room, their attitudes changed immediately. Word of her victory over Commander Thorin had spread throughout the Krex fleet. These hardened warriors looked at her with something approaching respect. Princess Vexthara, General Kohler said in the gravelly voice typical of his people. Commander, Thorin tells us you fight with wisdom as well as courage. This is rare among your kind. General Kohler, the princess replied, I've learned that true strength sometimes requires setting aside pride and tradition. Perhaps our peoples can learn from each other instead of destroying each other. The general's scarred face showed interest. Speak your proposal. Instead of presenting the formal diplomatic agreement her advisors had prepared, Princess Lyra offered something completely different. She had spent the journey from the asteroid field developing a new approach based on what she had learned from the humans. The Zephyrian Empire and the Krex Federation have been enemies because we've never understood each other, she began. You see us as weak and overly logical. We see you as violent and unpredictable. But what if those differences could become strengths? General Kohler leaned forward. Explain joint military exercises, the princess said. Krex commanders working with Zephyrian tactical analysts. Your people's combat instincts combined with our strategic planning capabilities. Together, we could create military doctrines that no enemy could predict or counter. The Krex officers exchanged glances. This was not the kind of proposal they had expected from a diplomatic negotiation. You would share your tactical knowledge with us? One of the commanders asked. And we would learn from your combat experience? Princess Lyra confirmed. But more than that. Cultural exchange programs. Krex warriors training alongside Zephyrian. Soldiers. Scientists from both our peoples working together on new technologies. General Kohler was quiet for several minutes, considering the proposal. This is not peace as traditionally understood. This is alliance. Yes, the princess said simply. Because I've learned that the strongest solutions come from bringing different strengths together, not from keeping them apart. She told them about her experiences with the human crew, how their diverse approaches to problems had opened her eyes to new possibilities. The humans taught me that unpredictability can be a weapon, but also that loyalty and cooperation can overcome any challenge. The negotiations continued for 6 hours. Instead of the formal language of traditional treaties, they hammered out agreements using practical, military terms that both sides could understand. Trade routes would be protected by joint patrols. Border disputes would be resolved through combined tribunals with representatives from both cultures. Most importantly, they established the framework for ongoing cooperation. Krex tactical knowledge would be shared with Zephyrian strategic planners. Zephyrian technology would be adapted for Krex military needs. The 2 empires would become stronger together than either could be alone. When the agreement was finally signed, General Kohler stood and offered Princess Lyra a warrior's salute. You have given us something we never expected, Princess. Not just peace, but partnership. The success of the negotiations sent shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. Within days, other alien races were requesting similar arrangements with the new Zephyrian Krex alliance. The princess had not just prevented a war, She had created a new model for interstellar cooperation, but the real changes began when they returned to Zephyrian space. Princess Lyra's reports about human capabilities and methods sparked intense interest among the younger generation of Zephyrians. They wanted to learn these new approaches to problem-solving. "Father," the princess said during her private meeting with the Zephyrian Emperor, "I request permission to establish a permanent cultural exchange program with the humans. Our people need to learn what they have to teach." Emperor Vexthara studied his daughter with eyes that held new respect. "You have changed, Lyra. You're no longer the sheltered royal who left our world weeks ago." "I've learned to think differently," she replied. "The humans showed me that our greatest weakness isn't our enemy's strength. It's our own reluctance to adapt and grow." The Emperor approved her request, and within months the first Zephyrian students were boarding human ships to learn about human methods and philosophy. Similarly, human observers arrived on Zephyrian worlds to study their advanced technology and telepathic capabilities. Jake Morrison found himself promoted to captain of the first joint human-Zephyrian exploration vessel, the Harmony. Princess Lyra served as his diplomatic partner, leading a crew that included members from both species. "Captain," she said as they prepared for their first mission together, "I have a confession to make. When I first requested to travel with humans, I thought I was choosing you because you were primitive and unpredictable." Jake grinned. "And now?" "Now, I understand that what I called primitive was actually advanced in ways my people had forgotten. You don't just solve problems. You turn problems into opportunities. You don't just survive challenges. You use them to become stronger." Their first mission took them to the far edge of known space, where they encountered a dying alien civilization that had exhausted its planet's resources. Using combined human adaptability and Zephyrian efficiency, they developed solutions that saved billions of lives and established yet another alliance. Dr. Williams, who had transferred to the Harmony as chief medical officer, watched Princess Lyra work with the alien refugees. The former royal was now on her hands and knees, helping to distribute supplies and comfort frightened children. "She's not the same person who boarded our ship," Kate observed to Alex, who was busy modifying alien technology to work with human systems. "None of us are," Alex replied. "Working with the Zephyrians has taught us things about precision and efficiency that we never knew. They've learned about flexibility and innovation from us. We're all better for it." Ben Harris, now serving as communications coordinator for the Joint Fleet, intercepted a transmission that made him smile. It was a message from Commander Thorin, who had requested assignment to one of the new joint military units. "The princess was right," the message read. "Fighting smart is better than fighting hard." The Kreks have much to learn from both humans and Zephyrians.